Hi, I'm Andy Saunders and welcome to My Beautiful Mistakes. Here we are, upstairs in the Jericho Tavern.
The bright lights of the city.
How does it feel?
It's great. I was just looking at a mural of our ugly mugs up there, maybe a bit younger. Yeah, it's great. It's funny. I saw loads of bands here.
Venues are always a little bit cold and in the day.
Yeah.
They're almost like they shouldn't be seen in the day.
They're sleeping, aren't they?
They are
the
sleeping.
venues are sleeping in the
they
day.
come alive at night.
Yeah.
And,
but I remember being right down the front of the Jericho here and watching. I used to love the Spiral Carpets, one of my favourite bands when I was a kid, and made my way to the front. And I think it was the song Joe came on, and Tom Hingley, I remember he rubbed the top of my head and said, "This is for this little soldier at the front. He's been dancing all night like this." And I was just like, yes, I love you.
Brilliant. So you were a massive fanboy.
Proper fan, yeah. I saw Radiohead here when they were called On a Friday.
On a Friday, yeah.
So one of the first bands I saw, Ride, as well, that I absolutely loved, Ride were probably the incentive for me and Gaz and my brother to get a band together. And I remember seeing them here when we were, barely pubescent, probably.
And they were very young as well, weren't they?
Yeah, they were a few years older than us, but so they were the cool kids. They were a bit older. And I remember Andy Bell playing guitar and loads of blood coming out of his fingers on the guitar, and me just being a bit like, wow, that's insane and great and really funny and weird.
Just talking about you as a musician, you're a drummer. Did you have lessons?
No, but I actually, when I was living, before we moved here to Oxford, when I was in Maidenhead, I think so I would have been in the first year at school, I did go and see someone to try and have some lessons. I think from maybe my old man said, just try and do something. So I had one lesson, and then he gave me a school homework jotter. And then after he gave me that, I thought, I'm not doing homework.
No.
But yeah, it was really hard. He just started doing this sort of jazz stuff, and I'm in drumming. I'm actually not a very good drummer. I can't do rudiments. I can't do paradiddles very well. I can do them slowly, but I'm not a well-rehearsed, well-versed sort of drummer.
How do you feel about that? The sense that you feel you're not a very good drummer. Are you just like, I don't care?
I know I'm not a good drummer, but right. I have a bit of spirit, and I probably, because I play guitar and piano a bit, I can sort of see where a song's going, and I know. See, I have dynamics, which is probably not great for other musicians, but I tend to speed up a tiny bit in choruses and pull it back, and the band over the years has probably learnt to go with me a little bit, I think, on those dynamic side of things.
Do you wish you were a better drummer?
Well, it's funny actually, because all the stuff with Taylor recently, Taylor Hawkins, who was a really good friend of mine, and
we're talking in the week that he died, obviously.
So this is so it was a pretty hectic thing. And I spoke to Taylor a week ago.
Did you?
Yeah, we were laughing about starting a band called the Dumb Drummers together. But I'm only talking about Taylor because I used to say, because we supported the Foo Fighters quite a lot at the start, and we became really good friends. He used to say, "Man, you're like Stevie Wonder, man. You're just kind of off, but sort of full of stuff, but just slightly off." And he used to say it's really hard to do that for drummers that have actually learnt their kit properly. He'd be like, "You're my favourite drummer, man." And I was like, "What are you talking about? You're this animal on the kit." But he used to sort of hide behind the curtains when we supported them, and I'd do a fill and turn around and he'd be there. He'd be going, "Yeah, that's it. That's the shit."
Amazing.
Stuff like this.
Tell us a little bit about those early recording experiences. So Courtyard Studios in Oxford, that was somewhere that you spent a lot of time at.
Yeah, actually our manager from Supergrass, Chris, who manages Radiohead as well and stuff, that's his kind of office and studios, him and Bryce. And we did our first Jennifer's recording in there. That's when we first met Chris. That's probably why he didn't want to manage us straight away, because he knew what we were like.
Right.
But we did lots of bits and bobs in there. We did lots of B-sides, recordings. Had all our like early meetings in there. And it's like a place in a sort of quite a sparse village, you know, in the middle of nowhere really. So it wasn't really high flying at all.
And when you signed your major label deal with Parlophone, and you know, which was presumably a big moment for you and the band to be on this storied label that had the Beatles, that had all these incredible, legendary bands. Did that have an impact on you as a band in terms of we need to take this seriously now and do this properly? And I'm just interested in how musicians sometimes react to a certain amount of pressure, if that's what you would call it.
I think we were a bit more sort of excited and gobsmacked by the fact that we'd signed to Parlophone, and I remember the day we signed, we recreated the Beatles shot outside Manchester Square
on the balcony.
Where they're sort of looking down on Beatles for Sale or whatever it was, and and it was more excitement, I think, than any sort of weighing feeling that
you weren't overwhelmed by it.
I don't think so. And also, I didn't really understand it. We were like 19, 20, you know.
But your first record was really successful.
I think it was the first one since the Beatles, the first debut
It
number
was
one.
the most successful record that Parlophone had since Please Please Me, I
Right.
think. Yeah,
Well, there you go.
Yeah, you know, which was that's a hell of a compliment.
Yeah.
And it sold a lot of records. I think you sold 1 million copies of that record.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And did that feel like a overnight success to you? Did it feel like it went very, very quickly and you were suddenly on a very fast trajectory?
I think we booked a couple of American tours, which was playing tiny little venues where no one knew us at all, you know, and some of the venues, like we were underage, under 21 or whatever, we weren't even allowed in there. And then we got back and the album had come out and it was, it was really, really different. It was living in Oxford, it was instead of people buying you a drink in the pub and saying, hey, yeah, how's the band going? It was like bus drivers going, come on, get on, you know, or old grannies in the streets going, no, my daughter likes you and stuff.
How did you feel about that? Did you love it? You loved that adulation?
Yeah, gotta love it, really. But I was always quite happy to talk to people and stuff.
And do you get recognised in Oxford now? Do people recognise you now?
Not today. I haven't been back to Oxford very much, you know.
Right.
I only spent sort of 7 or 8 years of my life in Oxford. Probably the formative years, but...
And then you split up, Supergrass split up in 2010, I think, is that right? I think around that sort of time after a fashion.
2010.
What was that like? Did it become, why did you split up? Why did the band end?
It just got a bit strained musically and you know, how we were approaching doing the albums and that was the kind of general consensus of the band at the time. But I remember being in Asda, I think. I think I was shopping in Asda for something and I was on an aisle and I got a text through from Gaz going, look, I'm going to leave the band, you know, I think, you know, that's it for me. And I was like, oh, or an email, maybe it just pinged through. And I was like, maybe I won't, maybe I'll go for shop brand rather than, I thought, you know, and that's how I, you know, we've been chatting about it.
Did it feel like being dumped?
No, not at all. Because it was on the cards a bit. You know, it was like we'd come to a bit of a block. We couldn't really. So it's like to save everyone's kind of friendships and sanity. I think Gaz wanted to go and do his own stuff, and it took me a couple of years to work out what I wanted to do.
What did you do in those couple of years that you were sort of post Supergrass?
I was just sort of moving around, doing up places, doing stuff. I did a stint on MasterChef. It was quite funny. Celebrity MasterChef. I
didn't see that. Where did you get to? How far did you get?
I did really well.
Did you?
I got into the semi-finals, and yeah.
Who did you lose to? Who was the eventual winner?
Phil Vickery, the rugby captain of England, who I became really good friends with at the time. I called him Lumpy because of his ears, and he called me Stickman. And we used to drink together before we were in the Thistle Hotel or something. Before we used to sort of film these shows, we were so opposites. You know, he's huge, and I'm this little guy, and you know, this rock and roller. and he was this sort of semi-athlete, but could really put his pints away. And I think really he might have sabotaged me in the end. I think I burst into tears at the end.
Did you?
Yeah, the pressure was just insane.
Danny Goffey, the master chef years.
But what it did do though, I got through it, but then it really started this love affair with cooking, and I cook all the time now.
Do you?
I love it. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. Something positive came out.
Oh, totally.
So how did music come back into the picture after this hiatus, if you want to call it that?
Yeah, I met Sam, this guy that ran Distiller Music sort of recordings, who was quite local to me, and there was a really good studio that was about 10
You were down in the
minutes.
West Country by this point?
Yeah, so I was living in Frome. And he invited me in to make some demos at the studio. That was all we were doing really, and I hadn't really recorded on my own before that much. And it was great. And then Distiller signed me to do a few albums.
As Van Goffey.
I think it was Van Goffey at the start, yeah. Yeah. And someone told me you've got to just be yourself. Just be yourself. Actually, I wish I'd saved it as Van Goffey now. You know.
How did it feel being on your own, having been in bands for most of your life? And it is most of your life by that point. You'd started very young. You know, you'd had a huge amount of success with Supergrass. You were globally renowned, and you know, you'd come back to this recording studio in Bath, and you're recording on your own. Did that feel natural?
I'd never really have this whole sort of clout of who I think I've achieved or something, and you know, I'm quite easy with people, and so it doesn't, sort of the backstory doesn't really come into it when you go into a studio for me. And then I met this really nice guy called Simon Burt, who was a producer, and we really clicked. And so, yeah, I basically have done 3 albums since, just with Simon and us sort of ratting off each other with Phil engineering. So it's really 3 of us in the studio, and it's great. I did a little stint with Baby Shambles playing drums for them.
How was that?
Really fun.
I mean, they were a dangerous band.
Yeah, not really. Well, yeah, they were unpredictable and
Got themselves
life
into situations.
Yeah, but they're really sweet actually. You know, Peter was always quite sweet, and was trying to be sort of sorted, and you know, but they just got themselves into quite good scrapes. And actually, to be honest, when I was playing drums, I probably helped getting into those scrapes. I remember staying up all one night and arriving sort of with loads of makeup, holding a banana, going, "When was the sound check?" And everyone going, "Oh, for God's sake, Danny."
And then, of course, let's get the band back together. How did that happen?
I think it was always on the cards at some point. We managed to do one long British tour, which was fantastic, and we were, by the end of it, the couple of gigs at Alexandra Palace, we were playing really well. And then the sort of pandemic happened sort of 4 days after our last lockdown sort of kicked in. And and it sort of just went poof. So this summer is where we're going to sort of find it all. It's been like the longest reunion tour in history. It was supposed to be sort of a 6-month tour, and it's now in its 3rd year.
Can we talk about the book? Is it? Yeah. I mean, what?
Yeah.
So Brian Mooney.
So basically, at the sort of the end of lockdown, or at the end of the first lockdown, we managed to get into the studio under sort of work premises and finish this album I've been writing. And then in the meantime, I was sort of writing this weird book about an older sort of rock star that gets sort of bossed around by his family and pulled in all directions and lives a fairly sort of a pathetic life. It was like a cross between sort of Christopher Biggins and Simon Le Bon, something like that, maybe. I don't know. Actually, they probably have brilliant lives, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
I've read a version of the book, but you tell me it's the completely unedited version.
Oh yeah, you told me earlier. So that was an early version without an ending or anything.
So you know, my take on it is, as you say quite rightly, a put upon aging rock star who's a slight figure of fun within his own family, who love him but think he's he's a bit ridiculous. Yeah,
and have to pick up the pieces, and he's also trying to sort of. The character was called Brian Moon. I tried to make it into a fictional thing, but you know, it's kind of based on my life story, but not my life story. It's one day.
Yeah.
From 7 in the morning, waking up from this dream he has where he feels like he's won this award, and it's a recurring glory dream where he meets David Bowie and everything, and everything's brilliant, and then he's woken up by a stiff kick from his wife that it's his turn to get the kids up and stuff. So yeah, and it's his day in a life basically, and I've just pulled little stories out and then sort of put it into that day slightly, you know, little anecdotes about living with the kids and the family. And really, I kind of started writing it because of the boredom of lockdown. It was almost like going out for the day. So, you know, it's a day. So I just started writing it like minute by minute, this sort of thing.
So it's like 24 in book form.
Yeah.
without,
it was all
without
written.
the kind of like guns and heroism.
And a good storyline. But I wrote it all on my phone.
Did you?
Yeah, which is really interesting, but it's just in notes.
Yeah.
So I'd write a chapter, and the chapter would be like half an hour of the day almost, and then I'd be really pleased. But I'd just sit up in bed if I couldn't sleep. I'd just start and one finger tapping, so to ages.
So you sounds like you enjoyed the process of writing. Do you find it cathartic, or?
I did. I loved it actually. It was quite hard in places. I found I'm not a great writer. I've never really written anything.
Now you say that. I think it's well written.
All right.
And I think you're a good drummer as well. You know, you had this kind of self-effacing element to yourself where you do yourself down. But
right.
I think you're a good drummer, and I also think you're a good writer as well, having read it. So, and I think it's a good story. You know, even if it is, you know, just a sort of almost an observational day in the life. I think it's great. It's charming and it's authentic and it's funny. It's very funny.
Well, that's the idea. I wanted it to be funny.
What's interesting in the book is that you're not confrontational in the book at all. No. And yet you have a life that seems to revolve around doing confrontational things.
People just have a go at me all the time.
So where should we go next?
Wheatley?
Wheatley.
Yeah.
I see you boys been fighting